Okay, so what we're going to be looking at today, Diamond, have a seat, is our future city designs. And I think we talked about that a little bit with the Lego project, right? But what I want you to do is imagine that if you were in a city in the future, what would be different than what we have today, okay? It could be like
probably some better technology, maybe?
It could be like 20 years from now, maybe 50 years from now, 100. What would be different? And what we're going to do, you guys just hang on a minute. You can ask me some questions and we'll have a bit of a conversation here in a second. But think about like ideas of what could improve the way cities are today. And we'll be looking at a lot of pictures from different designers, artists, architects, and people who came up with some ideas, all right? And before we jump into that, I think you have a lot of ideas ready, Brody. What are some problems or issues or things that are, it's fine, you can move where you can see, James, that cities have now?
Maybe they're not as strong as they could be in the future, so like tornadoes and
okay, good. James, please, can you sit down? Here, sit by Homeland and you're fine. Okay, so Brody said like tornadoes, they're not as strong as they need to be. Then buildings might fall down if they're getting old.
And
like
especially skyscrapers, they can't just be all built off glass.
Yeah. What about, any of you guys have an idea? What's something that we could make better or improve by our building design? Like think about, we're building a new school right out the window, right?
Maybe
right behind?
Maybe fireproof or waterproof.
Maybe more, so natural disasters could be something. What about, I know in STEAM class you've talked about probably like things like solar energy and...
We need to use our energy wisely because someday our electricity will be...
Yeah, maybe some more efficient ways of getting electricity. So what we'll do, we'll learn more about that in a minute, but your building design, you're going to try to come up with a problem that it can fix, all right? There's really no point in building a building just the same as ones we have now if we can imagine some of these different future technologies we have, right?
The force fields.
All right.
Whoa.
So a lot of, what's an architect? We'll start out with that. You guys know what that is?
Architect.
What does an architect do, Diamond?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No idea. Like the architecting something?
No, an architect, it's somebody's job. They're basically a designer who draws out the plans for buildings. So they may come up with these ideas, and then some of them are more like designers or artists that came up with imaginative pictures and drawings of maybe what they think the future will be like. Like this one has flying cars, big skyscrapers, maybe like what Brody was talking about. But we're going to look at some of the ideas they came up with. Hang on, phones are...
My job is running stuff. Like putting out fireworks in the air or water.
Diamond, you have to go to...
Like all I have to do is stop at the fires out.
All right, let's get back on track here so we can finish and start building today. Let's look at some of these pictures. We were talking a little bit about some of the problems, right? We have
way too much, probably way too much, we're kind of using up loads of our land space.
Yeah, we're using up a lot of space. Or what usually happens when they have to build a new building? Like let's say
they normally have to destroy it, just
you're
like
right.
the school.
Or even like if any of you were here before we started tearing down the new prepping the land for the new school, there was a forest back there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, instead of having to tear down the forest, how does this design, it looks like a gigantic star, fix that problem?
No gravity.
Well, look where it touches the ground, Landon, if you can see. See how it's only touching the ground in like a couple points?
Yeah.
So what happens to that land underneath it?
They're not going down any trees?
Yeah, they didn't really have to knock down any trees. They didn't have to tear down. That leaves room for nature. Maybe they could still have a park under there. Kind of,
maybe like a picnic area for shade or something?
You could do that. There'd probably be a lot of shade on that building.
I wonder how they will get in.
But it keeps that environment intact. They don't have to tear the ground down. Or like these ones, this looks like it's a really big or busy city. Maybe like New York City or Hong Kong or something like that, really big cities that have no land left, what do?
They would eventually have to destroy it.
You're right, but I mean, look at how they're really big on top and then just touching the ground in a few spots. They were able to build up instead of out, which is probably more difficult because they probably have to use a lot of stronger materials to make them that tall. And then that one, what about that one? James, how is this different?
It takes.
Hang on, Brody, let's let James answer.
My eyes kind of woozy, but it looks like it's a bow.
Yeah, so it's like a floating city.
It's like taking up some of the scene.
Yeah, look, if you had seen my map over there, most of the map is water, ocean, right? So you could have some floating cities. That might be a different idea. All right, let's keep moving on. So that problem these three we're looking at was space, not having enough and finding ways to make more.
Oh, I have a good idea. Shouldn't they can make a floating island on top of a cloud?
You can make something floating in the sky. So how could you do that? What would be some ways to make it actually float?
Have a force field around it, and then like a little opening so no gravity.
All right, so keep those ideas in mind, Landon. You may be able to use them for your design. Okay, let's look at energy. We talked quickly about that. What are some of the ways, this one it may be hard to tell, but in these two, what are some of the ways they are getting electricity or energy or power?
Sun?
Yeah, these are actually solar panels all along this building. What about in the middle there or on the side of that one?
Wind.
Wind can make it from, it makes the propeller there turn the wind turbine and that generates electricity. Or solar panels, I know a lot of the new base housing, you have the solar panels on the rooftops, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our new school's going to have a lot of that too.
But my house only uses it to heat the water.
Yeah, most of them do for heating water. It's pretty expensive to make it actually store up electricity right now.
Is our new school going to have a movie theater?
I don't think so. Let's look at pollution. We're not enough. Green space means like what we were talking about having to tear down like animal habitats and the environment, trees. Look at how some of these designs incorporate that into the building. This one is like a giant greenhouse, and I can show you some more pictures of that one later. They actually have some of the design, like of the inside, and that one looks like it has plants growing all over it. And this was kind of a city that had a lot of nature, trees, and water, different environments in it. I'm going to keep moving on. What's transportation?
Transportation is something that you ride or walk or something.
Yeah, so how many of you have ever been to like a big city like Washington, D.C. or...
I've been to Chicago.
Chicago's a good one. How did you get around Chicago?
Well, mainly I use taxis and trains.
So trains and taxis, maybe the subway if you've ever been to D.C.
Yeah.
You can take the subway to get around.
We use the metro.
Yeah, the metro. So some cities don't have a very good transportation system. We could look at better ways of doing that, right? Like,
Yeah.
what would be an improvement? You kind of see these big flying spaceships in there, or flying ships. They may not be spaceships, but you can maybe come up with a creative way of getting around instead of just driving a car everywhere, right?
Maybe they could like build like a one-story anything on top of the land, and then make an elevator that goes under to make.
Think
more.
about your ideas.
Hey, that one is a natural disaster. In Earth.
All right, Landon, look at these two pictures. How do you think they are trying to protect or prevent natural disasters or make these buildings stronger by the design?
Kind of like force fields that nothing can get.
You were talking about the force field earlier. I know that may be something we don't have the technology for yet, but maybe you could figure out a design, right?
Yeah, like nothing can get through it, and then there could be a button
We
inside
have,
to undo it.
Yeah, we haven't had one in a while, but we have some hurricanes around here once in a while. And if you go to the beach, you see a lot of the houses are up on, like, built really tall, right? On stilts, the beach houses.
For safety, for like ginormous waves and like
Yeah, the waves and the strong wind when the water gets up high. How do you think, look at this one here, it's on an island, so they might have to deal with that same thing. How does that design kind of address that?
And it's like the water could, the water
Maybe the
over
water
and go
would
through.
like maybe the water would bounce back or something.
Well,
or maybe
it's, yeah, not just water, what about really strong wind?
maybe it's really strong and sturdy
Look at-
material.
It's almost like an upside down U, right? If wind is coming at that building, if it's just a flat building, it's going to hit it and push it, right? What happens if it has a space for it to go through?
That's what I was talking
The
about.
wind will go right through the middle of it. We can actually try that out with a piece of paper.
Or the water, like if it went really high, it could go
It gives it a place to go, right? So the wind will go around the building instead of the hurricane knocking it over. And they probably pointed this towards the most likely path of the hurricane coming in from the ocean.
Is that an upside down U or is it just like solid thick?
It's like an upside down U.
Yeah, I think if you were gonna, I don't know if this is calibrated enough, but I think if you're gonna, we just got a new computer and it's not set up, but it would be just like a U shape.
Oh.
Alright, I made a change. Okay. Anyway, what we'll do next is you're gonna come up with your own design, alright? Think about a problem that you'll solve, or maybe you may have a couple, like if the building you were talking about with the force field and the flying, landing, that would be taking up less space and probably protected from disasters. But this one I really like because it shows, it uses just symbols, just graphic symbols to show how it gets at different things. Like the house, it's showing where people live, sleep, work. That's a guy lifting a weight for exercise, shopping. It gets its electricity from the sun, from solar power, the wind from the wind turbines. That's actually an animal there, so they can get fuel from animal waste. Waves can generate power, how it gets its food. You may want to label your designs like that.
I bet the food, if you're on an island, I bet the best food source would be fish, ocean animals.
Yeah, that's what I think it, I don't know if it shows it on there. But yeah, you're right, there's a lot of
There's
resources in the ocean that we're not entirely using because we're not out there. This one was kind of cool. This was a whole walking building. It's actually on legs or wheels that can move around. Alright, we're almost done here with this part and we can get started. So, you not only need to think about, like from the side, but what will your building, because the building is three-dimensional, and we'll just be drawing a flat, 2D on paper, what is it going to look like from the air? Like if you were flying above it, this one is laid out with like three circle shapes with a middle hub. I think that looks like some sort of port. See how this one is showing you from the sky what will your building look like, okay? Alright. Our next step, we'll take a couple minutes on this. I'm going to give you a design sheet and you're going to actually come up with your drawing and tell me a little bit about what you're going to make, okay? And after that, we'll actually begin to make it out of some different plastic, like I've got bottle caps, I have cardboard, all sorts of random pieces. And we can take a quick look ahead at what they might look like, but I'm not going to cover this too much right now. So here's one I built the other day out of just a bunch of parts like my glue stick. The base is actually just a big lid, cardboard scraps. And we'll go through the different steps of painting it, building it, and that's kind of what my finished one looked like, just about. There's a couple others from 3rd grade. Like this was Cavin's in 3rd grade. He wanted his to be a mobile underground city, so it could drill its own paths. This is a big drill in the front, and these parts were to come up to the, I think it was actually under the ocean surface to get air and different things like that. So he modeled it to look like it was rocked behind it. I think it was Adrian in 3rd grade made his kind of like the ones that just touch the ground in one spot, and he had a a helipad, a landing pad for helicopters and things to land on. There's a couple more. We had a few that made them look like they were in the water. Madison, this wasn't quite finished at this point, but that was actually a floating city. And she made it look like that was clouds under it. That's the one your sister made.
Yeah.
A bunch of different ideas, but we can take a look at it. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to get your design sheets and we will start doing some drawing and possibly modeling. Alright.